Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, welcome to the first Hereford FC Fans Forum. So, straight on to introducing our panel. First of all, a massive welcome back to Peter Beadle. We couldn't let the opportunity go, just to say welcome back, Pete. And I'm delighted to introduce Pete's assistant, Matt Bishop. So I'm going to hand over now, if I may, for the first question, and that's going to come from Gareth Davis.
Okay, for those of you who knew, I was part of the interview process working with the board. So the first question is, we asked you to present what your first 90 days would look like if you were going to be successful as the manager. You're just over 30 days in since being appointed. How has that been, and how do you think the next 60 days will look for you now we know what league we're in as well?
Yeah, I think that's been the biggest thing, is finding out what league we were going to be in was a big point for everybody. Obviously, once I got the job, the next thing was then obviously waiting for the season to finish, because obviously lots of players are still playing their seasons when we found out. So it was really important that we do things right and correct. So waiting for the season to finish, and then we obviously started talking to players then. And lots of things were the same. A lot of players were coming back, obviously really excited about obviously having a chance to come and play for Hereford. But the big thing was obviously waiting to find out what league we were going to be placed in. I mean, I'd always set a stall out that didn't matter what league we were going to be placed in, we would try and make sure we got the strongest side available to go out there every Saturday and play. Since we found out, obviously there have been a few knockbacks, but I expected that anyway, and it's just now a case of working even harder. There's going to be an awful lot of changes through pre-season as we go. There'll be some faces that you might see once in a game and not see again. There might be some you see for 2 or 3 games before we decide where we're going to go. There is a core of players that I'd like to bring in, and we're still working on that now. They will be players that I know that are capable of doing a job in the league we're going to be in and the one above. But outside of that, obviously, it's hard to just take players on recommendation from people. So obviously, it's important that we bring them in, have a look at them. But with our pre-season, the way it is being part-time, we have very few training sessions. We come in the week before our first game, so we'll train Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Then we have our first game. And then right then through to the season starts, we'll have a game Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday. So we only get the Thursdays for training, which in an ideal world is not great, but it's what we have to do, because we're going to have a lot of games to see a lot of players to finally get the final 4 or 5 that we may need to fill the squad. And that's where our time is being consumed at the moment, is still speaking to players, still looking to make sure we get the right type of character as well as player to bring in, and it's just ongoing at the moment.
Okay, over to the room. Anybody got any questions?
Oh, I like this. Oh.
That's a shock.
Yeah, right, David. How many have you got?
Honestly, at the moment, none.
Hold on.
Well, yeah, apart from the obvious. I've spoken to players this week since we've known what league we're going to be in, and I've got one at the moment that's a definite. But I'm still waiting for 2 or 3 tomorrow that I've said I'll ask for them to come back to me tomorrow to give me an answer one way or another, because I'm hoping that maybe Friday that we'll have 4 or 5 names to put out there, that people that have agreed terms and they're ready to come and they're ready to start, to obviously give us another boost, because it's important that we have a boost. We've had great news going through the summer. We're now at a point where it's probably been quite quiet on the football front. Lots going on behind the scenes at the ground and with the work being done on the pitch and in the ground itself. But obviously you people and myself and Matt are more interested in what happens with the team. So I think it's important we try and get some out there, hopefully by the end of the week. Again, if they come back and say no, we're on to the next ones. But I'm hoping that maybe Friday we'll have some positive news on 2 or 3. But again, it is still very, very early in the summer. And, there's no panic. We're not in any rush just yet. Obviously, we know what we're after and what type of player we're after. But like I said, a lot of players now have only just finished their season a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, so they're all having a break, and I'm sure they've got hundreds of managers ringing them, and they want to take their time to this before they decide where they're going to be. So at the moment, like I said, it's small numbers, But it's a work in progress, and we've got plenty of time, so we're not worried about it at all.
Okay, gentleman in the middle.
Because you're now not a professional football club, and a player says that he will play for you, how can you hold that player? Can he not go to some other club because he gets a better offer or something like that? What is the contract rights about these players?
It's still the same in non-league football, part-time football. If they sign a contract, they're tied to the club, and they can't go unless both clubs agree either a fee or, we might just say, well, we'll rip his contract up and let him go because he's being a pain or a nuisance or he doesn't want to be here. So if he's signed on a contract, then he can't go anywhere without us agreeing to anything in the first place. If they're part-time and they're on non-contract terms, there is a thing called a 7 days notice where a club, for argument's sake, for Westfields, might want to sign Gareth, and their secretary will contact ours and put in a 7 day notice. We can then waiver the 7 days, say, well, look, there's no point waiting 7 days, speak to Gareth. Or we can say, we'll wait the 7 days, but then we have no hold over him. He can then go and speak to Westfields, and then it's up to him where he decides to go. So, but on the contract terms, once they've signed a contract, that's it. They're tied to us unless we terminate that, or they get bought by somebody else.
So I haven't even kicked the ball, and I've been released already.
No, I just said you're on contract, that's all.
Good decision.
Yeah.
Will those levels of fitness be enough? Just training like you said?
Yeah, because it'll be the same for everybody. And I believe with the staff that I have and with somebody else who could be coming in, then they will get plenty of time to make sure we're ready to go on the first day. And there's no better training than games. So the more games they play, the fitter they'll be anyway. So we have no concerns again over their fitness.
Do you leave your options open to possibly maybe get an extra training day in or something?
We can do, but again, unfortunately with non-league and part-time football, the more days you have them in, the more money they want. So, and we try and do the best we can with the budget we have, which is a good budget for the level we're at. It's very competitive, and we expect to be at the top end. So, but obviously that has to come at a price, and the players that we're trying to bring in, it might only be a small squad this year, depending on how we divide that budget. But again, the more days you have them in, the more money they want.
So just on the back of that question, hand it over to Matt. Because you're both used to working full-time predominantly and with higher level players, what's the biggest challenge that you're both going to deal with, especially you, Matt, as the level of coaching you're working at?
I think it's that consistency that we get from players. To answer the question, I think the important thing when you're working part-time with players is that we utilise the time we have with them as best we can. So training has got to be intense, it's got to be relative, but at the same time we've got to work on what we want to do on Saturday as well and alleviate some of the issues that we might have had from the previous game. So I think the biggest thing for us is keeping that level of consistency, because we have to remember that the players that we're going to be working with have got jobs themselves, they've got other things in their life and other priorities as well, and football is just part of it, and it's probably a hobby in the first instance. So I think for us is it's working on that mentality with the players and building that belief and that team spirit within a camp, but within a part-time basis. When you've got players every day, it's a lot easier to manage because you're in control of everything they do. On part-time, you're limited, so I think that's the biggest thing for us.
Okay, run the route. Yes, sir.
Mind you, there's that many clubs in severe financial trouble at a professional level. I can actually see more and more clubs will be consisting of some part-time, some full-time, because the wage structure, which is a big part of the club, is equally destroying the clubs. And like, there's a lot of people, a lot of players that is above their station, so to speak, that they're playing in the third division. They think the Premiership, standard.
Yeah, yeah. It's always going to be difficult, and there are more. You're finding more and more clubs now are being backed by one person, but eventually that money stops. That person then gets bored, pulls his money out, certainly at lower levels.
Football agents are the biggest, but they could.
Hopefully we don't have to deal with too many of them at this level, just to start with.
Yes.
Peter, what about local players and the youth in Herefordshire?
Yeah, there's obviously I've spoken to Rob on numerous occasions, Rob Purdy, obviously he's had the under-18s at UITC this year, and we recognised, certainly when I was here previously with the youth team, there is talent in Hereford. That goes without saying. It's finding it and giving it the time to blossom, if you like. We might not have that time from the very start because of expectation levels. Expectation levels from you guys and from us are going to be we want to be challenging from day one. We know sometimes that doesn't work, but we also have to be patient because these boys will develop in time. Hopefully if Rob is still there with UITC next season, and certainly with the ones that we're looking at this year that certainly will do pre-season with us, you know, we will keep a close eye on them and make sure we bring them through and play them when they're ready. As we proved last year before, we had some good youngsters. Yes, 1 or 2 of them were local. Them local boys are doing extremely well for themselves right now. So it is there. It's just a case of finding it, bringing it in, looking after it, and coaching it and managing it as we go along. But that again is our aim. We want to work as close as we can with that group of young players, bring them into training as often as we can to keep them in the environment, to get them used to that environment. Once they're used to it, they relax, they train better, they play better, they develop quicker, and that will be the plan going forward. Again, we've got a lot on our plate with getting the first team together first with no players. So, but when we do that, they'll play a big part for us.
That's good, because going back to our last season, which wasn't the one that ended in disaster, but the last one in the conference, you brought through some really good youngsters. And it was refreshing to see lads going out there with enthusiasm, wanting to play for the club. When you looked at some of the guys that we were paying a lot of money to, didn't seem too fussed on whether they turned out or not.
I think players' commitment can always be questioned from the sidelines, but players want to play and they don't turn up to play badly or to not put the effort in. And I think sometimes when you're a young player, as young Jared proved, when you play without fear sometimes, when you play without that fear of making a mistake, and that was the way the culture we had in the youth team was we all make a mistake. We all make mistakes. It's how you react after you make that mistake. And sometimes when you're an older professional and you're in a team that we're making a lot of mistakes, it can wear you down. So I don't think it's a case. I think just playing with less fear brings out the best in players. And I think them young players in that year, you know, certainly in the year with the cup run and then with the 1 or 2 or 3 that made their first team appearances, you know, they certainly played without fear, and they were a timely boost of enthusiasm into the team when we needed it.
I think for those who don't know how the UITC has continued running, there's a coach in here tonight, Liam Brewer, Steve Brotherwood. They've played a big role in the last 12 months when the club was struggling to sustain teams still with the Hereford badge. Has been a credit to those coaches, and they've been superb. So to answer that question, because Pete and of course Matt hasn't been part of it, the parents and the players have still bought into the badge, so there's still an opportunity and a pathway for these players, even though we had a bunch of crooks trying to ruin it all. And so, you know, they've been brilliant. Next question. Anybody else? Nobody? Yes.
Where will you be training this year?
We're going to, first couple of sessions we'll train in Hereford, but we are looking to train just outside of Hereford. Again, when we got to the point of, with the budget we have, we need to make it as competitive as we can. As we said again, Hereford has got some talented players, but geographically it's not easy to get to. And we know that, there's no hiding from that. So we're obviously looking at players from Gloucester, Cheltenham, Bristol, Worcester. We're looking all over the place. And again, with the budget we have to accommodate the costs of them travelling to training, we're looking at somewhere maybe a little bit in between. So we will do quite a bit of training at Hartbury College at the start of the season, in pre-season certainly. But we obviously want to bring the players here the first week to make sure they get used to their surroundings and have a look around the ground and get ready to play. But obviously, like I said, it's important that we keep them coming in and keep them interested in coming in. If they start travelling an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes, it's a lot further for them to come, especially in the winter months. Whereas Hartbury, 25 minutes from here, 25 minutes from Bristol or Cheltenham or wherever, it's perfect. It's slap bang in the middle. Everyone's happy. The players are not doing as much travelling, and they're far happier to come when they're doing less driving in the car.
I think what you've spoken then about training maybe around the ground, getting to know the environment. Some of these players will never ever have played in front of the number of spectators that you've all gone out and bought season tickets for. They're going to be under immense pressure and not being able. It's going to take them a while to adapt to those pressures. that's a big part of the game, the psychological side. How are you both going to, again, help the players to adapt to that?
And that's it, and I think it's making them aware of that. I mean, everyone I've spoken to so far, when you ring them up and, Peter Beadle from Hereford FC, and they go, oh, wow, you know, you've sold 700 assists, so they know before we even speak to them. So they're aware of that, but the only way they're going to cope with it is by playing in front of it. That's the only way we're going to find out. We can talk to them, we can coach them. It's the same scenario as a penalty shootout, World Cup penalty shootout. You can't, you know, create the same situation in training. The only way you can ever sample it is by being there and doing it. Like I said, we get a great chance to do that very early on with the game against FC United. Hopefully there'll be an absolute jam-packed ground. The players will have their hairs standing on end before they walk out, and then we'll find out which one of them have got the characters to play through that. And hopefully they'll have it, but we'll soon find out those that are not quite there yet. But we've also got to be patient with them and get them used to that environment. And like I said, so we have the FC United game, possibly the game on Tuesday, Martin. Has that been confirmed yet?
Not yet.
Not yet, thanks Mark.
Waiting for the call.
Yeah, still sat there now waiting for it. Yeah.
You're not going to use what England did to beat Wales in the rugby, are you, with that, with the speakers going and creating a noise and all that?
No, we could. We'll have to chairman about that. The speakers in the changing room.
Next question, yeah, at the back.
Yeah, sorry, I might have missed it. We came in late. How far down the road are you with forming the squad? How many players have you got? And have you got local talent? Because there is talent in the city.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, at the moment we've got one definite, but we've got quite a few that we're just waiting for now. And the first core of players that I'm hoping will agree tomorrow and Friday are all local players. So again, so we're looking at a batch of 4, 5, 6 maybe lads that are all sort of within the Hereford county district, whatever you call it. They're all within that boundary.
Are these actual players you've gone out and had a look at?
They're players that I know. Yeah, they're players that I've seen play before, and I know about their characters and personalities. So they're players that are known to me. They're, as I said before, it's difficult to offer someone something when you don't really know, you know, what they're going to be. I mean, Gareth's been great recommending players and people that know players. Matt's been working hard. I've been ringing around people, getting good advice off people about certain players that we're looking to bring in. But without actually seeing them in the flesh, it's hard to just go, right, but there's X amount of pounds, come and play. He could be a real dud, and we, you know, without knowing it, and we've signed someone that we're not stuck with in this league. Luckily, we can move them on quickly, but we'd rather not go through the process of signing everybody and sundry to start with. So we're gonna, like I said, so through pre-season, just be patient, because there might be quite a lot of players coming and going very early, very quickly, but we'll get to where we need to be eventually.
Yeah. At the back there, yeah. Come to you next.
Is it likely to be a familiar face or two in the first team?
Well, I'll be there.
You're not playing, are you?
I could well be.
That's the back four sorted bit.
Yeah. Cheers. Yeah. No, listen, there will be. I'm sure there will be. I mean, there's lots of people in Hereford that people know about. Lots of players in Hereford that you'll all know. So I'm sure, hopefully, if they all agree to come back, there will be 1 or 2 that you will know.
Never.
You say you've been ringing round. Has anyone been ringing you? Saying I want to play for Hereford FC?
We've had an awful lot of emails directed through Martin again that have been passed on to me, a list as long as both my arms and legs of players. And again, it's about working your way through them. And again, there's no rush with any of them at the moment. We've highlighted certain positions and players for them positions we'd like to bring in. If we don't get them and they give us a no for definite, we move on to the next list of names that we were going to work through. So at the moment we've had, I mean, well, mine, hundreds,
150 plus?
yeah, of players that have contacted the club. And again, they go from the sublime to the ridiculous with some of them, some that have actually played league football and some that have played park football, but they've all shown an interest in coming to the club. So, you know, it's been really positive.
Just for Matt, you've both got a similar sort of playing philosophy, that's why you're going to work together. Will your philosophy dictate to the players, or possibly will the players coming in dictate that you might have to adapt?
Well, I'll let Peter talk about the style he wants to play, but I think it's very difficult to, you know, when we don't know what the players are, I think they're going to dictate the system that we play. So I suppose it depends on our recruitment and what type of players we get. And as you said, the likelihood it will change throughout the season anyway. So we'll need to have a system to play at home. And we'll definitely need a system that plays away, because teams, I think it will be a cup final every game for us. And a lot of teams will sit deep against us, so we'll have to find different ways of breaking teams down. So there'll be different styles and a slightly different system depending on who we're playing against. But the players have got to be the key to it. They're the ones that can set it out in stone based on their abilities. In terms of style, I think Peter's probably the best one to talk to because it'll be his team.
Our team.
If they win.
Yeah, if they're winning. If they're winning, it's my team. Yeah. No, I think, again, going back to previously being here, the style that we changed, transformed the team round from in the 8 games that we had. And there's been lots of talk about playing teams that had nothing to play for, and I wasn't worried about that. What we did do, though, was we changed the philosophy of the whole group of players in 8 games that went from one style of play to a completely different style of play. And believe me, the style of play we wanted to play was much harder to play than the one they were playing before. Playing in straight lines up and down is pretty easy to play. Playing the way we played, and certainly with the style that we played the games in the last 4 or 5 games, for them players to turn it around the way they did was great. And again, nothing changes. We want to be a team that plays football, which is part of this football club's heritage, or the previous club and this one going forward. It's always been a football club that's played football in the right way. But we also know that going away to some of the grounds we're going to be going to this year, the pitches, the facilities are not going to be conducive to playing out from the back. And so there are going to be games when we are going to have to be a little bit more direct. But there's a way of playing direct without just lumping it aimlessly. So it'll all be, you know, constructed around our opponents, the way they play, the pitches we're going to be playing on, and we'll adjust accordingly. But when we're at home, hopefully on a pristine pitch, we will try and play at tempo, very attacking minded, and try and create chances as we did towards the end of the final season we had here. Because I think certainly the last 2 games we had at home were extremely exciting for me, sat on the sideline watching the boys play and taking on board everything we've done. And we probably had more shots and crosses in them final 2 home games than we'd had for probably the previous 5 or 6 home games. And that won't change. We'll continue to do that. The best form of defence is attack, and we'll look to get at people and cause people problems.
Get the back.
Peter, it was a fantastic series. You talked about the 8 games at the end of the season, were absolutely fantastic. But are you finding when you're talking to players that it's more about the journey that the club is about to take going forward, maybe than just the level we are at in 2015, 2016? And what I'm hinting at maybe is players who may be playing at a higher level who say, you know what, I want to come and play for you in front of 1,000, 1,500 every week, because I can see 4 or 5 years ahead where this club is going.
Without doubt, there's, like I said, I think the players that I've spoken to, that I'm hoping to find out about in the next few days, have all played at higher levels at one point or another. And I was pretty unfortunate. I spoke to the chairman before. I had a young lad who rang me up who was desperate to come back, and he played 30 odd games in the Conference North last year, and he was desperate to come and play for us this year, but he's gone away for a while, and he's hopefully not gone away in prison. Don't panic, he's not gone away. Not gone away. He's just gone away to another country for 4 or 5 weeks, and we're going to stay in touch. And when he comes back, if there is an opening for him, then he'd like to come back. So these players, you know, there are lots of. I've had 3 or 4 knockbacks of players from higher leagues because again they feel that where they are right now to drop down 3 divisions. Because like I said, I've been talking to players, Conference North, Southern Premier, Northern Premier. We've been talking to everybody, and a lot. Like I said, a big decision was the league we were going to be in. I think if we'd have been in South and West, I think a lot of them ones, the 3 or 4 that have rung me this week and said probably a bit too low for me, would have come. But unfortunately they're not going to come this year, so maybe the following season. But there are an awful lot of players from higher levels that have shown a huge interest about coming back and the journey that we all face in front of us now.
Any more? All quiet? Go on, the gentleman there.
What I'd like to ask is, a few years ago, many years ago, part-time players always were guaranteed a job in Hereford as well, because they had to supplement what they were getting from the football club. Have you any dealings with local kind of firms that they could employ the youngsters here to give them a amount of money and to supplement what you're going to be giving them yourselves?
Yeah, in an ideal world, it'd be perfect to have all the players living in Hereford, working in Hereford, and obviously playing for Hereford would be perfect. But that's not the world. And nowadays a lot of players, even the younger ones, have their own jobs elsewhere. They all have, a lot of them, you find a lot of them are self-employed. A lot of the younger players tend to be coaches working in community departments, development centres, so they're looking to do that and keep that going because obviously they just love being involved in football. So, but there are one or two that live a bit further afield. Again, another one that I've spoken to, and we are looking to find him employment in Hereford to bring him back to the football club. Was a previous player here, and one that I think needs a bit of a luck and a bit of a break. He's had a tough year last year, so you know, I have mentioned it amongst the people that sit around the table over there about if anyone knows anyone who is looking for a young, enthusiastic, you know, player to come and work hard, then it would be much appreciated. But there's very few like that now. They're already either in college, universities, or have jobs of their own.
Because you've had players playing at a higher level, earning a lot more money, how much of a draw do you think not only the 1,000 or so supporters will bring, but also the historical name and badge will bring as well to draw them to the club? That's
the draw, because it is a massive drop in salaries for them coming, if they're coming down 2 or 3 divisions. It is a big drop in salary. I spoke to a player last night before, who plays in the Southern Premier, so we'd have to win 2 promotions to get to where he is now, and he's taking home, you know, almost double what I'd be offering anybody this year. And he's only a young player, he's never played anywhere before apart from non-league football. So there are an awful lot of money flying around in non-league football at the moment at certain clubs. So yeah, it is the draw. You know, apart from obviously me and Matt and Roger and John, who are back as well at the club. So apart from us, the rest of it is down to you guys sat out there and the history the previous club had before it.
I was just going to make an observation. It would be quite nice. The lads at work take the mickey out of me because I support a team that's got a manager but no players. So it would be quite nice when we've got some players if you could drip feed them through onto
that's the plan. I mean, like I said, tomorrow hopefully I'll have some really positive news. Fingers crossed, touch wood, and all the rest of it. That we'll have some positive news. But again, because we're looking for so many players, and this is not a normal situation, as I've said before to some of the press people, that at the end of the season, I've got managers ringing me up left, right, and centre, maybe offering their assistance with players they may be letting go, but also, you know, talking to them. They're looking for 3, 4, 5 players max, maybe, to bring into their squad to freshen it up. We've got to find the whole group. We're not just looking for 5 players. We're looking for 16, 17, 18 players. And it takes time. So instead of drip feeding 1 or 2 every time we do it, we're going to, hopefully, like I said, Friday, we'll have 4 or 5 that have agreed, shaken hands, ready to go. That's they're Hereford FC players next year. And we'll announce that as soon as we've got the 3 or 4 that we're after. But hopefully, like I said, by the end of the week, fingers crossed, that we get some positive news.
Yes, first gentleman there.
Just a thought, the old Hereford United. There were 2 or 3 reasonable players in there, I understand. I didn't go to see them, obviously. Are we in contact with any of that?
They've been in contact with us, 1 or 2, but again, they live so far away. A lot of them, again, London-based players, and they would be looking for accommodation, which we can't offer them right now. They'd have to pay for that themselves, and obviously once you explain to them that we're part-time, not full-time, then they would have to find a job in Hereford or travel from London every 2 nights a week and a Saturday. That sort of soon puts the kibosh on it for them.
I was going to say, the camp beds have gone in Starlight.
Yeah, the camp beds have gone apparently, yeah. So. No, that's right. That's right. Well, I don't think they want to do it for no money at all now.
Gentleman behind you.
In terms of the balance of the squad, where do you see in terms of numbers the balance between contracted and non-contracted players?
Well, if we can, all non-contracted. I mean, like I said, being non-contracted gives us a fair amount of flexibility with players. We can move them around if we feel we need to. There may be some real young talents that we think that we need to put them on a contract to keep them with the club. But again, we're playing step 5 football next year, so like I said, if things go well, and we expect them to go well, we'd like them to go well. If they do, then who knows, there may be 1 or 2 sniffing around again, especially as we are going to have a fair amount of younger players in the squad again next season. So unless they ask for a contract for the money they'll be earning, it really is irrelevant, a contract or not. So unless someone was desperate for a gun. We're a contract, all it means is it guarantees their money every week. With a non-contracted player, if he doesn't turn up on a Saturday, we don't pay him. So, like again, it gives us flexibility to move things around, and so it gives us that chance to bring in another player. Perhaps if he's not around, we can bring someone else in and say, right, well, your wages this week are going to go to him because he's coming in to play this week. So, but if they're contracted, whether they play or not, they've got to have that money. So, like I said, ideally non-contract if we can, but there may be one or two that are a priority for us, and we may need to put them on a contract. But I don't see that happening just yet.
Just regards to that squad, if you're looking at, say, your starting 11, have you got an idea with your philosophy? Are you looking to have a strong spine with a certain age bracket? Are you looking for younger players with a lot of pace, maybe playing out as fullbacks or wide players? How do you see, in an ideal world, your sort of squad modelling up age-wise and ability-wise?
Yeah, I think we've got to look at the league we're going to be in, and with the way that we want to play. I think it's important with having quite a few younger players around, but these younger players are not young players that have never played before. They've all had experience. One of the players who's signed, who's agreed, the one player has agreed, played 30 games in the Southern Premier last year. So he's 19, so he's no mug. He's played 30 games, 2 levels above where we're going to be playing next season. So so he's no fool. Ideally, yes, of course, we'd like 1 or 2 experienced players in there. An experienced keeper's always nice, but everyone wants one of them, so we might have to go for someone a little bit younger. But centre half, middle of midfield, yeah, proven goal scorer. That's what everyone wants. So so we just got to make sure we get the right ones. But we're looking, like I said, it's going to be a young side. So that's what we're looking for: young, energetic, full of character and energy, but also one that wants to improve their game, because that's why this chap's coming in as well as myself being there. Is we want to work with the players to make them better as individuals as well as a team. But obviously having a bit of guidance on the pitch with someone who's been there and done it sometimes always helps as well.
So maybe, sorry, just to take the next question on to Matt. For those people perhaps who don't know Matt, if you can just explain where you've been and where you are now as a coach, so they know what they're getting as well, because you know a lot about Peter Beadle, but what do you want to know about Matthew Bishop? Who are you and what?
That's a good question.
Sorry, Bish.
Right, thanks, Gaz. That's a great question. Background. That's probably the best thing to do. Background. Started as a young pro many years ago. That's how me and Gaz first met. We were at Swansea together. Finished probably about 23 in terms of the pro game, went into the semi-pro game. Had a passion for coaching. That's really what I wanted to do, and what was probably better at than playing. So went through my coaching badges, got my pro licence, worked for the Welsh FA for 14 years. Did a varying number of jobs there, which Gaz knows all about because I work with Gaz. Worked at international level across the border with the 16s and also the under-17s. Run the coach education programme up to the A licence for a number of years. And then left, and at the same time was at Newport County, working with Dean Holsworth as his assistant. And obviously got promoted from the Conference South, and then went into the conference, and then moved on to Aldershot, where I spent 2 years, and I think we played twice here. I can't remember the scores, but it was always, as I said before, it was always a great place to come and play, because the pitch was always good and the fans were passionate, and it was always a good game. And came back numerous times to obviously scout both yourselves and other teams as well. So had 2 years there at Aldershot, left Aldershot, and then took up a role with the English FA, one of their national coach educators, so I do all the A and B licence work across the North West and West Midlands. Most recently I've done a bit of work with the England under-20s as well, up until Christmas, and stepped back for that through work. So sort of my background has been a little bit of playing, a lot of non-league, and then I've worked at all levels in the game. So I've worked at this level, I've worked at Step 5, I've done some work at Clevedon, I've worked in the Welsh Premier League as a coach. So you know, I feel, and that's one of the things when me and Peter sat down and we spoke about this opportunity, and it sort of excited me because it was that sort of blank piece of paper, the fact that we're starting afresh and we could start something new and start a new era at this football club and get it back to where it should be. And also the fact that we were going to have a brand new group of players that we could mould and gel and hopefully get some success back here. So that's the exciting thing for me. But in terms of you know, priorities really, the most important thing is that, you know, Peter needs all the support he possibly can do. Yeah, well, I'll call you other things behind the scenes. He needs all the support he can do, and sort of I see my role here at the football club, one as a sounding board for Peter, but also, shall I call you Pete then?
Yeah.
Or do you want to call you Effie?
Right,
I'll call you Pete. Or Beads, I'll call him Beads. I'll call him Beads, okay. See, we're having an argument already. Beads. So the important thing for Beads is that I'm a sounding board, but also then I can give him that support he needs around the players as well, because you'll need that. So that's really my sort of my background. So a little bit of everything really, and a little bit of experience. But, you know, really excited about the challenge coming here.
Cool.
Just a final question. With the players you're going to find this season, the following season, will you keep them if you can, or will you let them go? And if you let them go, can you get money for them in the situation that you're in now at the moment?
Yeah, again, if they're contracted, we can. Obviously, if they're that good and we sell them, obviously if they're contracted that good, we'll want to keep them. But again, it just depends on where we are come that final day of the season. And as always, as is now, there's a merry-go-round of players moving from club to club to club because they've been released or someone's offered them more money or they've had a great season. So depending on that, obviously if we've got a centre forward who's got 25, 30 goals with 10 games to go, we'll be sitting down with him way before the end of the season to make sure that he stays with us for the following season, wherever that may be. So, but obviously if they're under contract, then we can command a fee for them if they're that good. But obviously also if they're non-contracted, then at the end of the season, if we don't negotiate terms with them, they can leave and go wherever they want, when they want.
Will you make certain they're on the contract if they're scoring 20 or 30 goals?
Well, that's what I say. With 10 games to go, if they're on 20 goals, they'll be signed. Don't worry. We'll pin them down and make sure they sign.
Yeah.
What's the scope on loans? Because obviously you guys have got history in youth football as well. I mean, with academies, you've obviously got link-ups. Will you be able to take youth loans for a kiddie at 17, 18?
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. I mean, what you find is nowadays, I went to Liverpool with Jenks when we were here with a player to have a week's trial at Liverpool. And we went there and I sat down with the head of the academy there, who I actually found out, when I found out who he was, I realised I played with him at Watford. So I knew him anyway, so we sat down and had a coffee together and I mentioned, obviously, look, if things go well at Hereford next season and we stay up this year and I get the job the following season, what would be the chances of having one or two of the younger players to come and play? And his reaction took me aback a little bit, but it was quite snotty. And it was a case of, well, we want them to play at a much better level than that. That's even some of the younger ones. Now, I watched 2 Liverpool trainees play for Cheltenham in the Football League this year, and they struggled like mad. So it's about finding the right club that understands what a player needs at that particular age. You know, again, I spoke over before I came here in the car park with someone, you know, and we had Jared. Jared was ready for training with the first team by Christmas in his first year as a scholar. There was no point in training with us. He didn't need that, but he was getting no benefit from that. And then come Christmas, when he started training with the first team, he needed to be playing. So he progressed far quicker, and he needed to have that experience to develop his game. A lot of these big clubs, and I mean, we know I've got great contacts, certainly Birmingham, West Brom, Stoke, you know, places like that, which are pretty close, Bristol City, Bristol Rovers. Probably more chance with them, Bristol Rovers and Bristol City, than we would do with the bigger ones. But they just seem to think they've got to write their player. Their young players should be playing in the league, or, you know, and like we said, when Corey, Billy and Jared were playing in the first team that season, you know, the chap from Wolves came down and looked at Jared and said, we've not got anybody in our 21s who could play in your team in the conference, let alone anyone in our, you know, in our youth team. So it's finding the right balance. If we can, it's certainly something we would look into. But again, you've got to find the right club that has the players at heart the best interest of the player, because a lot of them just think they should be playing in the league and they're not ready for it yet. But you've got to make them understand that. But we'd like to think we'd have a chance of maybe 2 or 3 at some point in the season if we need to.
Will we ever consider going full time again? And if so, what league would we have to be in?
I'll answer before I give it to the chairman for this one. I think we certainly need to establish ourselves as a club first. We need to have, we have got some form of identity from the previous club, and it's all a follow-on from that. But it is, in all essential, a new club, and we need to sustain ourselves and make ourselves get ourselves a good footing first. And then I think as we progress through the leagues, I think a lot of it comes down to the support that we get. If we can maintain a large number of supporters coming every week to the home games, financially it's a big reward for us. And obviously the more money that comes into the club through you as supporters and sponsors and backers, hopefully the bigger my budget will be as we go along. But I think that, again, I touched on it earlier with geographically as we go through the leagues, I think it's going to be harder and harder to attract far higher quality players to Hereford if we are only offering 2 nights a week. But again, that's for, in my vision, that's for maybe, if we're looking at Southern Premier, Conference South step level, Conference North, whatever it may be, when we get to that sort of level, for me, I'd like to think we would be having discussions then about going full time. But again, that would certainly come down to where the club is financially with the support we're getting. You'd like to think if we've got to that level, we're maintaining a big attendance, a big crowd, big following from the supporters and sponsors and things like that. So that all makes it better, but it has to still be within the confines of what the club can afford and be sustainable with. But again, obviously, the chairman will get fed up with me within the first 6 months, I can guarantee. The chairman, can I have some more? Can I have some more? Can I have some? So, but I don't know what the chairman's thoughts are on it. I should pass it to him.
It's no. To be honest, there's not a lot to add to what Peter said there. We're at the very start of what's going to be hopefully a very long and exciting journey, and the word that we keep using is sustainable, and we will continue to use that word year after year after year after year. And at some point, as we're heading back towards the Conference Premier, hopefully, that might be a question that we answer, but certainly at the moment it's not even on the radar.
Any more around the room? Yeah.
What would be a good season for you next season coming?
Sorry?
What would be a good season for you this season coming?
This season coming?
Yeah.
Well, listen, a great season would be to win the league and win the Vase. It'd be a great season.
What about the FA Cup?
I don't think we're in it, are we? We're not in it the first year. As a new club, I don't think we're allowed in the FA Cup the first year. But listen, there's no point. I made it clear in my interviews that there's no point me coming along and saying, well, let's just make sure we do all right this year. If I'm going to do it, as I did with the kids the previous year, there's no point me coming to try and progress the youth team if we're just going to come in and train every day and go through the motions. I have to push them young players to make them better. I'm going to push the players I have here, my staff, the guys sat at the table there, they know me. As nice as I am to be around, when I don't win and things don't go well, I'm vile. And I want to win every single game, but I know that doesn't happen. But our ambition is to win the league and to win the Vase, because that's what we're here for, to win. And that's what that's what we're aiming for. We might not achieve it, but we're going to have a bloody good go trying to get to where we want to be. If it doesn't happen this year, we're going to be close, and we'll try and do the same again next season.
Will we be entitled to go into the FA Trophy as well? Or?
No, Step 5 don't compete in the trophy. Step 4 and above in the trophy.
Okay.
So just on what you said about staff, why was it important to you to bring those 2 gentlemen back?
Oh, because I can slap them around. And, no, because they were part of Hereford. Roger's been here for many, many years, and people recognise Rog and Johnny as being part of the former club. They also know plenty of people in Hereford, so they're great contacts to have, and they do their jobs to the best of their abilities every single time they walk in through the club. And that's what we need from everybody. Johnny's even playing cricket there as well. What time is the first ball being bowled tonight, Johnny? Cricket?
So just back to the loanee question.
Yes.
If you're going to struggle to get younger players in, will you have to be a little bit reactive because everybody's going to be in the same boat trying to model squads? There's going to be some players released at, say, step even step 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Are they going to be the sort of players that you may be able to get in on loan, because things move quickly within 24 hours in football?
You know, and again, loans are not ideal at times, but they do serve a purpose. Now, I chased a goalkeeper for weeks, and once we found out what league we were in, he informed me that it wasn't quite for him this season, and I appreciate that. So my first phone call was to a conference club, and they have a third choice keeper who played in the Conference North last year, and they have agreed with me that if he doesn't get another club at a higher level, he can come to us if we need him. If we don't have anybody else in place, I'm hoping we will do, but if we don't, we are, you know, again, around the contacts that we have, Conference North, Conference South, I have good relationships with, obviously, Gloucester City, with Forest Green, with Western, with, you know, with all of them clubs in that area, Bath City. But again, there'll always be someone in their squad that isn't getting a game every week, that might need, yeah, okay, they might say, well, why are they using us to get fitness? We're getting a player from 3 leagues above to come and play for us. So we've got to make sure we use that to our, you know, to our advantage when it's available and if we need it. But yeah, like I said, we would be looking for anybody to come in, and if we can get a player for nothing, great, bring him in. Some clubs might say, look, just take him. As long as he plays, we don't want anything for him. Perfect. Another player to add to our squad.
And Matt he's aware of what the Welsh system looks like, being on the border. Where do you see the Welsh Premier League being in relation to the steps with the English system? And are there players that are in the Welsh system that may be something to look at as well?
There are. We just talked about it briefly on the way here, and I had a conversation with someone on the way over in the car. And the problem we have with the League of Wales is there seems to be a huge amount of money flying around at that level of football. Now, for me, I don't think it's a great standard. I don't think it's a hugely competitive league. But when someone offers you £400 in your hand to take home on your 2 nights a week and a Saturday, it's hard to turn it down. So they would rather take that than come here. Again, there's 1 or 2 that would want to come. As you know, we've had a conversation with one. He's managed to get himself into Europe with his team. So, you know, but hopefully if they get knocked out early, he might want to come to us then. So, but there are some out there. But again, the top end of the again, players that we think are going to be good enough to come in, they command such salaries now that they won't even get out of bed for what we're offering them, what we have at the moment at our disposal. So it's a tough one to follow, because every club in that league seems to be spending double, triple what our budget's going to be next year. So when you've got that budget at your disposal, you can keep someone sat on the bench with £300 a week, because they're handy to have there when you need them. So I think we would struggle to bring players in from that league. Certainly next season going forward, it would have to be someone that would want to take a serious drop in money to come to play for the club, because of the club, the ground, the atmosphere, the supporters that are going to be there. So I don't see us dipping into that one too often just yet. So I think that's about right.
And I think that's key from as a group, as a city. It's a small city. Everybody will know. Everybody knows everybody within and around the football environment. These people want people who are committed to wear that badge. They love football. They love the club. And as long as you're getting in players who wear the shirt with a lot of pride and determination, they'll back everybody.
And I think that's important. We wouldn't ask for anything less. That's what we demand, is that when you turn up and train, if you're going to come in and train properly. When you turn up to play, come put the troubles behind you, come and play. You've got some great supporters, as they've shown over the years, and certainly when I was here, that if you play well and you play with passion for the shirt to do well, no matter what the outcome, they will stick with you. One of my previous clubs have just won promotion in the playoffs from the conference, and it's a club that I always probably felt closer to than any others, because there was that rapport between us as players and you guys as supporters, that as long as they saw you trying your best every single week, you could have the worst game in the world, but as long as you're trying, they'll stick with you. And that's important. That carries people a long way, and it shows it this year with Rovers in the conference. They've had 11,500, 10,000 for home games, because the lads have worked hard. I've seen them play a few times, and they haven't played particularly well. What they have done is they've shown a huge commitment and a huge amount of effort. But you don't have to be the best player in the world to run around and run your socks off.
I was crap, they loved me.
Yeah. Well,
we sold you.
Go on.
Going across
Yeah, but again, that's not. It used to be pretty good system. We had a young lad from Cardiff in the youth team last year, but it took us 3 months to get his clearance. I don't know why. He only came from Cardiff's academy. He was under 16 and got released, but it took us 3 months to get his clearance through. So it has days when it can work pretty quick and days when it takes a little bit longer. But yeah, we still got to get clearance for anybody that comes in from another country, even though they are right on our doorstep.
Yep.
Equally, right, like we've got very good ex-players and that has helped Hereford, no cost, and no cost totally, and they've got the. But it's very, very hard to put 11 players together. You as a manager and everything else, to expect them to gel through it. And I think equally the supporters are going to be patient for you to give the chance to get 11 players. You just can't flick the switch and expect them to do it.
No, if we hit the ground running, it really will be a bonus. But we've got a long pre-season schedule ahead of us. We've got a lot of games in pre-season, but unfortunately, certainly, like I said, the early 3 games or so, you'd like to think that we're going to be chopping and changing a fair bit until we find the right balance of players, characters, personalities to bring in that are going to make the squad as strong as it can be come the 8th of August. But when we come the 8th of August, again, we're going to make sure they're as prepared as they can be, but we've got an awful long time after that to keep working. And like I said, we'll work hard on the training ground and we'll make sure that every week we get better and better. And that's, again, the philosophy we had with the youth team last year. You can always do better, improve something as we go along, and that was what their aim was. Every time they played a game, they wrote their little notes out of what they thought they did well, what they didn't think they did well. So next week, the things you didn't do well, let's make sure we do them better. Every week is a progression, and that's as long as we keep moving forward on the field. I know that behind the scenes, that's going to keep moving forward, and obviously, hopefully, you guys will keep following us through as well, and it will just gather momentum as we go along.
Any more questions?
Just one more.
You shouldn't have brought your dad tonight.
We're likely to have the biggest crowd in this league because of the support that Hereford United has throughout the area and also throughout other counties. Now, because of that, there's got to be a lot of money. So because we're getting all this money coming into the ground, we should get the best team. Should we not go fully for promotion?
Well, we will be going fully for promotion, as we said earlier, but I don't think it works as in because we get the best crowd, we get the biggest amount of money. I mean, there are lots of individuals out there, and speaking to someone very recently, there's a team that are just coming up into our league that have just won promotion, and I can't remember their name off the top of my head, but apparently they are spending an awful amount of money. And there'll always be 1 or 2 teams in every league you go into that are spending a large amount of money. And we may not have the best budget in the league next year because there may be 2 or 3 that are spending more. But again, it's not about how much you spend, it's getting value for money, making sure we get the best value within our squad. But that's what our aim is. Our aim is to win promotion. So that's what we're taking part in the league to win it, and that's what we're going to try and do.
Any more? Yeah.
Away games, will you be going in a minibus or an executive coach?
I was hoping we were going to fly. Is that what we were flying?
Westfield.
Yeah. No. Well, hopefully we want a coach because obviously I think if we'd have been in step 4, we probably would have had a few more players from that side of sort of Gloucester, Cheltenham, and it would have been easier for them to go straight to the games. But I think we've discussed that there will be a coach available for all games, and I think that's right. I mean. One of the things I've always tried to do is take excuses away from players, and the excuses are, well, we haven't got a coach, we haven't got this, we haven't got that. So we try and give them as much of that as we can, and obviously a coach goes a long way towards that. They travel there and they prepare as best they can, so they get a coach of sorts, not a minibus where it's all cramped up. So hopefully it will be a coach. But from what I can gather, Johnny, we can't get a coach to some of the grounds, can we? We've got to get off about a mile short and walk up the rest of the way.
Last question at the back.
You spent a lot of this evening talking about the passion of the people in this room, and I think the first to say that there was over 300 in the Welsh club, there's over 200 here tonight. It just shows what you said to be absolutely true. But going away from home next year, we could be looking at 4, maybe 500 for some games, turning up with maybe only 100 home supporters. From a player's point of view, and your point manager, what difference does that make when you go into a ground with nothing like the facilities at Edgar Street and you're backed by 400 away fans?
For me as a player, it would do nothing but spur me on to keep doing well every week, and that should be the drive for all of the players. And some of them will probably not be used to it, and hopefully, in a lot of ways, going away from home, it will intimidate our opponents. You know, when you've got 300-400 supporters overtaking a ground that's they call their home, and hopefully they're as loud and and vocal in a get it behind the team way that that could maybe put one or two people on the back foot. Obviously, we'll try and make sure that our players are prepared for this and ready for it, which is why there are one or two games in our programme that are, like we go to Brimscombe. Brimscombe's not far from me. They're playing in the Hellenic League Step 5, but I know their ground quite well. And their ground is very small, very pokey, but it's done for a reason. It's done to acclimatise, if you like, the players, that when they get there, this is what we're going to be used to. We're not going to have Edgar Street every game. We're going to go away to games. Obviously, we've got Pegasus and Wellington, but a lot of players will know them grounds already. When you go to somewhere you've never been before, and Brimscombe, I'm sure any of our players probably would never have been to a place called Brimscombe and Thrupp before. But this is what we're going to come up against. Sorry?
Where's Brimscombe?
It's in Stroud.
I've played there.
Yeah, so but again, it's a sort of ground that we're going to be playing in the league, and it's important that our players sample that as well as sample the Edgar Street, and hopefully 1,000, 1,500, whatever it's going to be, they get to sample everything so that when they go there, they're as best prepared as they can be. But it's going to be your support, as is shown throughout the years, and certainly in my short time here. Some of the youth team boys when I was here said they've never seen so many people at a youth team game. So that because you enjoyed your football and you appreciate good football, you come and supported a team that were playing good football at the time. So, but then players got used to that, and then obviously went on and achieved something great for them, something they'll never forget. And obviously we want to try and do the same thing for our team.
I think just on the back of those 2 points, really, the coach and that, you're both professional people, worked at very high levels. How are you going to water things down? Just the final point, really. How are you going to water it down? Will players have individual plans to work to, so that because they're going to be quite distant from you at times? How will you water that down? Just quickly in a nutshell, really, to finish off.
Well, yeah, ideally, everyone will be there for training. That will be part and parcel of it. But there may well be the odd circumstance when they can't get there or whatever for whatever reason. But that is part and parcel of non-league football. So they will have certain things they will have to adhere by. Certain rules and regs, but also programmes they might have to stick to if they can't get to training. But also making them understand the environment they're going to be coming into is vitally important mentally. The mental state of players is as you know, with your job and Matt's job, we know that a player that's mentally right and switched on, you'll get far more from than one that just turns up and goes, "Oh, we're here today, are we?" without knowing anything, looking into anything. One of the big things that shocked me once was I asked a player about, other teams in our league, and he went, "Oh, I don't know, I couldn't tell you who they were." So he turned up every week playing these teams, but couldn't tell me who was in the top 3 or 4 of that division that particular year. And that astounded me, because he's playing football, and I eat, sleep and breathe football, so I know, all the leagues, who's where, who's doing what, maybe who the managers are of that particular league. And it's important these players have the same sort of mentality, because it's important they know where they're going and where they could end up. So we'll try and manage their needs as best we can. With the 4 of us, then between the 4 of us, I'm sure we can do that.
Ladies and gents, we're going to have a 15-minute break now, so we'll reconvene at 9:20. But just before we break, could you show your appreciation for Pete and Matt?